Don Larson again. I think we can get started. Welcome to today's webinar on the deployment and mobilization of technical graphics. I'm Don Larson, and I'll be giving a brief presentation or introduction, and then Dave Manick with Visual Sight, who has a background in technical illustration and technical illustration software and graphics, will be giving the main part of the presentation. But before we get started, a bit on our housekeeping rules. All attendees will be muted for the duration of the webinar. If you experience any problems when joining or during the webinar, you can use the little chat box down there. I've got an arrow drawn to it, highlighting it. The voice over internet is recommended audio option. Questions during the webinar can be posted at any time in the questions box. Questions will be answered at the end of the webinar or by a follow-up email. We'll also have one poll during the session, which is very easy to participate. It's anonymous. We'll publish the results online, but the individual part of the poll is anonymous. So the agenda is going to be, I'm going to start with just a brief company profile. We're going to have a poll. We're going to have some background information, and then the main presentation and some technology demonstrations of various technologies. And then we'll wrap up with the Q&A and some closing remarks. Larson Software Technology, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're based in Houston. We were founded in 1984, and we're experts on CGM and graphics technologies. We've been doing that for over 30 years. We develop and market graphic software tools based on open standards. We promote CGM usage by making a free CGM and TIFF viewer called VizX Reader. We're a member of the CGM Open Foundation, which maintains the CGM standard. Larson products are used in technical publishing by aerospace, defense, and heavy manufacturing companies. The products are used to create, maintain, and deploy technical graphics. And with that, now I'm going to turn it over to Dave for the main part of the presentation.
Thank you, Don. Welcome, everybody. As Don just said, we want to really start with a poll. There is only one, so I'm just going to launch that now. You can see that it is anonymous, and Don mentioned that as well. So I'm just going to launch the poll, and just please participate. You can put tick boxes in as many as you like, so it's not kind of one choice. You can select multiple boxes. Obviously, if you don't deploy anything at the moment, then obviously you don't have to participate. Once you've completed, I'll just give you a few more minutes, then we'll launch the results. So I think we're virtually there. Okay, I'm just going to close now, and I'm going to share that with you. It's pretty even, I think. The 67 CGM, 44 SVG, 67 PDF. Nobody's doing Flash anymore, which is not probably surprising with some of the issues around it. And we'll probably touch on that as we go along. And then we have 67% others. So it's really a broad spread across all those different things. We're very limited with the poll in what we can do and the number of answers we can have. So that's the reason we have the other at the end. So thank you very much for participating in that. We will send out the slides, or they will be available at the end, and we'll publish those results as well. So at the beginning of the presentation, quite a lot of talking, give you some background, but as towards the end, middle towards the end, we'll have a lot of kind of technology demonstrations to give you some ideas on how you might deploy your graphics, or you might be already doing it. So, but hopefully it will give you some good ideas on what the art of the possible is. So certainly mobilizing and deploying technical graphics or technical publications is definitely a reality. And this has really been propelled in recent years, and because of really things have changed, I think, and One of those is expectations, and we'll go through these in a bit more detail. But expectations are definitely changing. It could be a generational thing, or just the technology is there and the devices are there now to deliver information, technical publications, in a more mobile environment. So we'll also look at benefits. What are the benefits to doing that? The data is a key area. What data do you create and what data do you deploy? Because that will determine some of the functionality you give to the user. We'll look at devices and also technology, more software, the software side. What actually do we use to deploy the information and what do we use to create the information in the first place? So definitely technical, we'll focus on technical graphics today, and they really do play a significant role in a technical manual, as you know. And I think with delivery online and electronically, even more so, I think, with just the user interface and moving around and actually communicating information. But there's definitely specific challenges associated with that, and that's hopefully what we're going to come to communicate today to you. So expectations, I think they're definitely changing, and I think there's a generation thing that the expectation has changed for some of the consumers now, that they can or expect to have information displayed to them electronically. So there's an acceptance that the information can be delivered on a digital display. And also that there's a familiarity with the hardware devices and interfaces now, because we're all using phones, iPads and so forth, and even touchscreens on laptops and computers. So there is definitely an acceptance there that we can actually deliver information online or electronically. So what's the benefits? I think the benefits are twofold, and they actually come from the production side and from the consumer side. From a production perspective, then when we're creating information, then we can revise it or that much quicker. The deliverable itself becomes more cost effective, lower production costs. We're not going to print anymore or creating a duplicate output of the information. That still might take place for some legacy information, but certainly newer information, then it's going to be more than likely just electronic, even if it is just PDF. Also easier to manage. So if we've got electronic information, then we can keep control of it through configuration control in a database, so we can actually manage releases of information. And improve delivery times. We can update online or on a server the information almost instantaneously. So the user is getting the benefit of the latest information rather than having to go out and create a bulletin. We can still do that, but we can also update the actual information itself. From a consumer point of view, so the user, it's a lot easier to get hold of the information. Hopefully it's more secure, but there is a dependency on the infrastructure that you're using, obviously the server or the internet. Interactivity, so we can click on things on the graphics and hopefully interact with them to get more information or to animate the information, so that there's a lot more possibilities to deliver more compelling information to the consumer. Also integration, so we could integrate the graphic. We could actually launch another system to help us do maintenance management or go into a supply chain, so shopping basket, something of that nature. So there's a lot more possibilities of integrating with other systems once we have the graphics or the information electronic. And finally, rich multimedia options, so video, animation, 3D, and obviously 2D as well. So the data itself, this is, I think, the key, because there's a dependency on what we deliver to the consumer, and that is the key, is the data. Because if we can't add interactivity, if it's too large, the files, if they're not accessible and they're not current, then we're going to not really give the user the experience they're looking for. So these are really key. The data is a key thing, I think. So from this could also help with the optimization of the production process, the data. So I'm a great believer that the data should be structured in some way, be it the graphic itself or the actual text. So once we've got a structured data source, then we can easily validate it. It will become more consistent when we deliver it to the consumer or to the customer. So I'm a big believer in structured data such as XML and so forth when we're actually creating the data. So we come to the devices or the mobilization of the information. Today there's no shortage of devices to deliver this information: tablets, phones, hybrid laptops, desktops, but the commonality is they all have a web browser technology installed on them. So this would in theory be the easiest way to deliver the technical manual, through a browser type environment. But the devices themselves, the production of them is unrelenting. There's new ones every day. So there's no shortage of devices to deliver this information on. But I think the major requirement for the users in any environment, and particularly technical manuals, is interaction. So they don't want just a page turning exercise. They're probably now looking for more kind of interactivity or movement in their graphics. So how do we achieve this? What's the best way of delivering it? Now, it's not always dependent on the device itself. We go back to the data at this point. If the data cannot actually have the interactivity in the data itself, then it doesn't matter what kind of device we've got. So the data is the key to delivering this information, or delivering the experience as well. The fifth one was technology. And this is, when I say technology, I'm more talking about software. And that's the capability to actually produce and deploy the information. So in technical publications, I think it really falls into these three main categories. As we've mentioned, production software, so XML editing, illustration, data management. And then we go into the integration solutions, so a way of connecting systems together, either in a production environment or in a deployment environment. Either way, you could have integration of the technical manual with other systems. And then the deployment software. And what I mean by that is the mechanism to deliver the information to the user, either through a browser, a specific viewer, or an app, perhaps on a mobile device. But today's presentation, and this is informational, we want to try and focus on lots of different technologies and perhaps products to give you some thoughts on those. But the focus is on technical graphics. That's really our area of expertise. So I think there's different factors you've got to consider when we're talking about producing the graphics. There's the software itself. Compliance, do you have to comply to any particular standard or specification? Interoperability. I wouldn't nowadays want to actually base my archive of information on a proprietary format. So interoperability is key, really. So you really want to think about perhaps using an open format to at least deliver your data, so we can use it in different environments, different software. Obviously, quality is always a big factor. You want to deliver the best quality to the customer that you can. And functionality is where we're talking about interactivity. So you really need software that enables you to add functionality to your illustrations or graphics. So as we said, this webinar really focuses on the deployment, not as much the origination, but I think we have to touch on that as well, because that is a dependency on delivering the data. So again, as I said earlier, the correct file format I think is crucial, which one you choose to deliver your data in. So I would expect most people on the webinar are familiar with data types and file formats. But just to go through these, there's so many, it's difficult to obviously put them all in this presentation. But I think they fall into different categories. So we have 2D, 3D, and I've also put a third one in there, animation, because I think it's a hybrid of the two. So both 2D and 3D. So we have raster, vector, and perhaps even a hybrid of raster and vector data, which we can deliver as part of as the final deliverable. So file formats. it's like, say, how many do we need? There's so many. But I want to try and focus on open formats rather than proprietary. So on the raster side, pretty much all the ones you've heard of, like JPEG and TIFF and PNG. Vector, we have, surprisingly you might think of vector PDF, but PDF can contain vector, or the newer versions of PDF can contain vector information. CGM, computer graphics metafile, SVG, scalable vector graphic, and the AI format. So AI is perhaps a proprietary format for Adobe Illustrator. Probably better off using PDF now to export from Illustrator. 3D, there are so many formats. I couldn't list them all on here, but I've tried to list some of the open formats that you might want to think about. PRC, U3D, 3D XML, X3D, which formerly was VMRL, VRML. So there's a lot of formats on the 3D side. We'll touch on 3D as well. And animation, there's the Flash format. SVG, scalable vector graphic, can contain animation. And also 3D PDF can contain animation as well from a 3D perspective. So there's a lot of file formats out there. It is a bit of a minefield, so that's always a bit of a caveat on when you're delivering information. So from a production point of view, then I think it's always best practice from my background to implement the software designed for the task. I used to come across a lot of people who were trying to adapt software to do a specific task, and at the end it probably proved to be a false economy. They could have done it a lot quicker in more specialist software. So lots of mass market products out there, but at the end of the day, the features don't always suit themselves to do technical graphics. So I usually see a bigger return on investment if you go into something specialist. I think the software itself can be categorized by capabilities. So usually 2D, 3D, capable of animation, or capable of compliance. So you could usually fit it into these different categories. But you can get software that fit into all of them. I've just listed a few examples here. So from the 2D side, we have, there's a product from Toner, there's Larson's own product, 2D and 3D options. So Arbortext IsoDraw, Corel Draw both have 2D capability but have a 3D as well. And then we have more focus on 3D, where we can manipulate the 3D model and create animations and so forth. Things like CATIA Composer, Creo Illustrate. So there's lots of different software in this category. And obviously there's the whole CAD world as well to look at. So what I'm going to do is just at this point, just as a bit of a break, is launch VisXedit. So with VisXedit, this is the Larson software. You can see here we've got hotspots here. So if we wanted to add interactivity to this software has the capability to do it, as does things like IsoDraw and so forth. So I think this is where it's important that you actually choose the right software for the task that you're doing. If I go to File and New, then say for instance you have a grid, so I can begin to start drawing to that grid. So again, this is something that other software really can't do. So, or out of the box, you'd have to manipulate it to actually do, or adapt it to do this particular task. So this is where I think using a more specific piece of software can definitely help you. And also the fact that we can then save as this file into, say in this case, this is S1000D, but also aerospace standards. So this is when I spoke about compliance. So this is, you wouldn't find this capability, say, within Adobe Illustrator. And then we got all different formats we can save in, including SVG. So this is not specifically CGM. You could also save to scalable vector graphic as well. So that's really what I'm talking about when I'm talking about specialist software, that it has specialist ways of creating illustrations and then adding value to them, say through the CGM format for interactivity. So how do we deploy these graphics electronically. Certainly hardware is a consideration. The majority of hardware devices out there are very capable, and they usually would have a web browser installed on them out of the box. But you also might need a specific app on mobile devices to deliver, say, certain formats in technical graphics. The complications that can arise: the browser might not natively support the required file format that you're creating, so you might need a plugin to actually deliver that information, say on a laptop. And plugins not really supported on mobile devices at all, so there you'd have to substitute that with an app. So technical graphics usually would require some secondary software to deliver them into, say, an IETM, an interactive electronic technical manual. A good example is CGM. So you would really need a plugin to deliver that, to view that graphic. So really consider the file format you're using, and is there an alternative? So mechanisms for the deployment. With raster, if you're in a web browser, then this is really straightforward. So you just embed it, as we've always done, into HTML code, your JPEG or your PNG. But the sacrifice there is we're not really getting a really interactive illustration. And plus, we're going to lose quality when we zoom in and so forth because of pixelation. So perhaps one of the best ways for 2D is vector. And we have CGM and SVG as both good alternatives for the delivering in an electronic environment. Formerly CGM, you needed a plugin. With Larson, they have a new technology, HTML5 technology, which we'll briefly look at later. But with SVG, we'll also look at that. You have a HTML5 native format that you could use as well. So there's different formats you could use to deliver vector in an electronic environment. 3D files, again, usually require a plugin to deliver them in an electronic environment. But there's a new technology called WebGL, which provides a HTML5 solution where you wouldn't require a plugin to deliver 3D data. So again, this is a big benefit. And animation as well, 2D and 3D, usually you require a plugin to deliver it. But certainly HTML5, and probably we'll look at this in more detail, is a technology that is changing this paradigm of plugins, where we usually need something else to view a graphic in a web environment. So just to give you a brief on Microsoft Edge, because I think this is quite important if you're already using ActiveX controls, is that many IETMs actually rely on Internet Explorer as their foundation technology to deliver the technical manual. Edge is a new version of the browser bundled with Windows 10, and it no longer supports, it doesn't support ActiveX controls anymore, no plugins. So the result is that something like Arbortext IsoView, which is used a lot in technical manuals, will no longer be supported in the Edge software. So the short-term decision is we just don't update, so you keep everybody on the older browser. But obviously that can't be a mid or long-term strategy, so probably time to seek an alternative technology or way of doing something, product or technology. One of the big casualties was Flash, because that was a plugin, but what Microsoft have done is actually built Flash into Edge, so you don't really need to install a plugin anymore to run Flash. So that's an easy call for Adobe and Microsoft, but for some of the kind of niche products, for like CGM viewing, that's not going to get built in, so an alternative will need to be found. So the mobilization of the technical graphics, what's the biggest challenge? How do we display technical graphics on mobile devices? So both iOS and Android present the same challenge. If you want to view the graphic and maintain the interactivity, then you will most probably need an app to do that. But that's only really going to show the graphic in isolation. It's not really going to connect you to any other part of the technical manual unless there's some kind of external link. So here's some of the apps that you can get already. Larson have one. There's a SVG plugin, PDF plugin. So you can get different apps, obviously, to show different types of data, say, on iOS on the App Store or from Android. So it's certainly, it's not that you can't display them. It's can you display them as part of an overall deliverable or technical manual. So as I said, if the requirement is to display the whole technical manual, then we're going to have to come up with another solution. Certainly on mobile devices, not as important on the desktops. But the majority of tablets and smartphones do have web browsers installed. So on iPad or whatever, on Android, you're going to have a web browser on there. And invariably, it's going to support HTML5. So with the HTML5 technology, it really does offer some new and exciting opportunities to deliver graphics without a plugin. And we're going to look at some of those. In fact, HTML5, it actually applies to all hardware platforms. So it's not just, we can run on a laptop or whatever. So in theory, you could deliver one manual across all different devices without changing it. The only caveat I would put on this is that the device might need to be in a connected state. So in other words, the data is served out. So if that data is not actually local, then you could have an issue then when you're in a disconnected state, actually still viewing the graphic and certainly experience the interactivity. So that is something to bear in mind. So from my point of view, I think last year I got this thing that HTML5 really is a game changer for delivering information electronically. If you didn't know anything about it already, then it's just another version of a hypertext markup language, HTML. It's obviously the core technology for the internet for actually presenting data. It's not owned, it's not proprietary, so it's an open technology. And HTML5 added some new syntactic features, including video, audio, and canvas for graphics. And we'll look at some of those in the demonstration part. And additionally, it also has the SVG graphics format as part of it as well, so it's a native to HTML5. So the new features, they're primarily designed for multimedia delivery without a plugin. That means we've got a device independent framework for us to actually deliver information across multiple devices. This is a really key point here, that this is across multiple devices. It also introduces several application programming interface APIs, so getting a bit kind of technical, but basically allows us to extend the technology out, and we'll talk about one of those technologies, WebGL, in a few minutes. So now we come to me stop talking a bit and actually show you something. So for instance, going back to HTML5, usually we needed to deliver video, we'd need a plugin of some description. But with HTML5, they've added the video tag. So what I'm going to do is just click this link, hopefully it's going to work. I'll apologize at this point, we get some kind of commercial material, so I'm not trying to push any of these companies, it's just that the site we're using actually has them on. So we can see the code on the left hand side, so they can see the video tag here, and we can see the video over the right hand side. So this has got some sound which I'll turn off, but so you've got some audio as well. So even though this is video, this could still play a part in a technical manual, certainly an electronic one, because you could deliver a video of, say, a certain procedure or something like that. So this shows you just this one bit of code actually embeds this video into the HTML. And I can even edit this here as well, so I could actually make this a lot larger, so double the size. So let's make that 480, and then see the result. You can see now our video is that much bigger. So it shows you how easy it is to actually embed video into. You can see also at the bottom here we've got a video tag is not supported in Internet Explorer 8, so it's only going back so far. So let's go back to the presentation. So although video is not technical graphics, I still think it's relevant to technical manuals. what is relevant to graphics is the canvas tag. So this is not really about drawing. The canvas tag doesn't actually draw anything. It's just, as the name suggests, it's just a canvas. It just gives us an area to put a graphic in. And all the actual drawing part of it is done via what we call JavaScript. So you really need some kind of background in JavaScript to make this work. But I'll show you some tools that might help you do this. So first I want to show you an example back to the same site. In fact, that wasn't supposed to happen. So let's just go back. Whoops, sorry. I think that tag's changed. So what I'm going to do is going to show you this this particular example here of Canvas. So this is just a website, paper.js. So this is just using Canvas as a way of showing the graphic on the screen. So this is all this is done is with JavaScript. When I move the mouse, you can see I'm moving it up and down, that it actually changes the graphic. So more sort of animation, and I move to the side, it changes again. If I click, it actually changes those Bezier curves to straight lines. Click again and it changes it back. So this is just using the JavaScript and the canvas tag to actually manipulate the graphic. So I don't see this being used perhaps for complex illustrations that you might find in technical illustrations, but certainly if you're creating something like a diagram, then you could use it in that sense, or a dashboard, then I think it'd be particularly useful. So the question is, do you need any JavaScript or programming experience? I'm not going to go to this link, but there's a piece of software called Drawer.js, which actually creates the code for you. So it gives you more of an intuitive environment to create something like that. The other format I spoke about was SVG, Scalable Vector Graphic. So that now is part of HTML5 as well. And as you saw earlier on, BizX Edit supports SVG. So again, it's not something you would actually draw in a code sense, but this is the code, say for this simple item here, to actually generate this ellipse with this particular color. So you wouldn't start really writing code to draw something like this. So you can easily change the color and the width of it here, but you would again probably use something like Adobe Illustrator or BizX Edit to create your SVG and then put it into your web page rather than obviously create it here. But this just to give you an idea what it looks like from a code point of view. So again, no plugin, the graphic is there, easy to work with. So let's close that down, sorry. And also SVG can have animation as well. So we've got another example here where on the right hand side you should see some animation of these ellipses. So again, no plugin, we don't really need Flash to do this. So, and the overheads of the file sizes and so forth are going to come down because we don't have to load that plugin anymore. So again, this is the SVG, but we have some script in here that allows us to do the animation. But again, you're going to use a specific tool, perhaps Adobe Illustrator, to create something like this, or something that's useful for your customer, like a functional illustration. But again, it's just embedded, so no plugin. Then we come to 2D and 3D. So we've looked at 2D with SVG, but we could also use, say, WebGL to render 2D and 3D images as well. So this is a JavaScript API, which I spoke about back earlier on in the presentation. And it's very good at rendering interactive 2D and 3D graphics. It's, again, open, so it's a non-profit organization that maintains it, called the Cronus Group. It's completely integrated into the web standards, HTML5. There's no plugin required. It actually uses the canvas tag to embed it into the HTML. And WebGL is widely supported in modern browsers. So again, Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Safari and Opera. So the majority of web browsers support, or certainly the major ones support WebGL. So it enables us to do 2D and 3D. So Larson have developed their technology for CGM, viewing CGM without a plugin using WebGL, but it's also used to do 3D as well. So let's look at these first. Just take a couple of seconds to load. But this is 3D without any plugin. I don't know what the speed is at your side. It also has music, which I'm going to turn off, so you can have audio as well, but it's really impressive, the speed of this once it's in the browser. So there's no plugin. You can select a model of car. You can select a better car. You can change the colors, say in this case the wheels. So you can see it's really interactive, and then we've got no plugin involved. So I think it's a particularly impressive example, obviously not technical manual. So what we did is searched around, see if we could find something else that was more technical in nature. And we found this one, which is more of a kind of a component. It's an injection molding. So you can see again the speed is really good, again using WebGL. This has even got a parts list with it. So I can identify parts by highlighting them over here. It doesn't actually explode, this one, but I think it's still got the base plate. So easy to, so you can see it's definitely interactive. I think if you probably introduce some animation in here as well. So again, no plugin, that's the key. There's no other plugin involved. We didn't have to install anything to actually see this file. And then I said, this technology can also be used for doing 2D as well. So with Larson, what they've done is actually created a technology to present or display CGM files without a plugin. So again, we're in a 2D environment this time. We're showing a CGM file. We can present it very quickly. We can zoom in on it and so forth. So don't be fooled here. We have a control panel or a GUI interface which you can easily implement here. So, but the key is we've got text, we've got the graphic, but we've got no plugin involved. So I think hopefully you can see the way that things are moving forward. So I'm quickly moving around here, and this on this side is just being rendered by the WebGL. So this is the CGM file without any plugin at all. So hopefully you see the benefits of HTML5 allied with other technologies. A final example is 3D PDF. And when we started this, putting this presentation together, we didn't realize the size of it. And I think what we've agreed on is to do kind of more focused ones on some of the technologies that we've been shown today in more of a series, because there was just in the end too much to put into this one presentation. But PDF is everywhere. It's really supported on everybody's machine, but some people I've found are unaware that it actually supports 3D data as well. The benefit of PDF is it's, again, open, like CGM, like SVG. It's an open technology. It's not proprietary. As you know, it's compact, secure, and it's easy to share. If you're interested in it, I recommend you go to this particular site. If you don't get time to write this down, don't worry, because the slides will be available later. We've got a particular 3D sample here, but see, these are some of the companies that have technology that's based around 3D PDF. And there's also an iPad app as well, because what we found was that with PDF or 3D PDF, that you really have to run it as a PDF file. To embed it in HTML, we're still trying to figure out if it's possible to have it as part of a web browser. to embed it as part of a web browser. The standard PDF viewer you get in, say, Chrome doesn't support 3D PDF. So this sample is actually, you can see I'm in Adobe Reader here. So it's a PDF file and I'm looking at it in Reader, but you can see it's 3D, so I can move it around a bit like I was doing earlier with the car. The nice thing about this example is, though, it's also got a bill of materials, so I can click on a particular part. It then knocks back the parts that I'm not interested in and just highlights the part that I'm looking at, I'm interested in. So we've also got a spare parts type illustration here, but in 3D, and it's in its 3D PDF. We've also got different views of the item down here as well at the bottom. So I can just scroll down here and you've got, say, exploded view. The only thing I can't do is actually manipulate the things by clicking on them in here. But I know for a fact that you can actually animate objects within 3D PDF as well. So if you've got the right software, you can animate them. So there's a lot of possibilities for delivering in PDF as well. So going back to the beginning, then there's an endless kind of way that you can deliver graphics now, I believe. So it's choosing the right one that suits your particular requirement. So I've not gone into all these links, but I said these will be in the slides when we make them available. So in summary, I think we've established there's a lot of different mechanisms and hardware and software used to deploy technical graphics. Probably a lot more than they used to be. The plug-in technology paradigm, I think, is changing. I think this will go away. And there's good reasons for that, because of the fact for IT installing software on computers, and they have to go through some kind of accreditation process, which obviously costs money. So there's a good reasons to go away from the plug-in technology. Also, security was a big issue. I think HTML5 has opened the door to a lot more and exciting opportunities to display technical graphics, and hopefully we've begin to give you some ideas today what those are. The producer of the information definitely has new options, so he has to probably think about how he delivers his graphics in the future, especially if they're electronic. From the consumer point of view, from the display of the graphics, then the benefits are, we've seen them today, a lot more intuitive user interaction, a lot faster to render 2D and 3D graphics, and no requirement to download any software to do that. So there's some big benefits from both sides. And when we spoke about at the beginning about a producer and a consumer, then both sides should benefit from this. So at this point, I'm going to invite Don back onto the line just to see if we have any questions that we need to be answered. Hi, Don, are you back?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so
we have,
yeah, go on.
We have one, yeah, we have one question so far.
Okay. HTML stated to be supported. Can SGML be supported? I'm not really sure in what context. SGML, standardized generalized markup language. This obviously is an older version of XML. So if you wanted to use that in a HTML environment, you'd have to do some kind of transformation on it, usually via some kind of XSLT script. So you would take, so I'm working on a project at the moment where we're taking SGML, you then turn it to XML and then to HTML. So the answer is yes, but it would have to go through some kind of transformation process for SGML. But that's not really about the graphics side. From a graphics point of view, then it's usually going to be might be CGM, it might be SVG. So, but from a textual point of view, SGML, then it would have to go through some, definitely through some transformation to take advantages of HTML5. I've got another question here, Don, as And I think I did touch on this. Are 3D PDF supported inside a web browser?
Yeah. No, they're not. Currently, the state of things right now is the 3D PDF for Internet Explorer is an ActiveX control. The PDF that's in Chrome, for instance, on a PC doesn't support 3D PDF. There is a built-in viewer on Chrome that doesn't require a plug-in. But probably more importantly, more relevant here is on mobile devices like iOS and Android. It's not 3D PDF is not supported. PDF has become native now in the browsers, simple PDFs, but not 3D. To view a 3D PDF on an iOS device, for instance, you'd have to have an app, and there are apps for that.
Yeah, I think we did. There is a link to one of them in one of the presentation slides. So.
Yeah, that's right. I think you did, right?
Yeah. So this is we've been investigating this, and it doesn't seem to be possible. So that's why my demonstration today was an actual PDF file. Just to give you an idea, the size wasn't bad. It was about 3 megabytes. But if you imagine you have multiple pages, then that's going to boost the overall PDF up to a pretty big manual, unless you had them individual PDFs and then a central kind of interface going to them. So what I might answer this one, Don, is what are the major differences between CGM and SVG? I think the major differences is that SVG is native to HTML5, whereas CGM isn't. So that's one of the major differences, but Larson have got that new technology that helps with that. The other thing, the only criticism I would have for SVG in a standards-based delivery, compliance, is that it's very difficult to control SVG. It's not particularly interoperable between devices. From my experience, you transfer it from one software to another and you could lose information quite easily, whereas CGM is much tighter control, so a lot easier to kind of manage the information and more interoperable. Okay, we've got another question. Don, you showed the use of code to get the animation for certain graphics. Is it necessary to code it in, or do authoring tools take care of the code before it's publishing to PDF? I think with PDF, I don't think the animation we showed with the JavaScript is going to work in PDF, is it, Don? It's really in HTML.
Right. Yeah, I think the answer to that question is it is the authoring tool would take care of the animation. I mean, you could with JavaScript you could code up you can code it up, but you really it would be quite tedious. So you really want to use a some kind of authoring tool.
Yeah.
For instance, for 3D, I know there's a nice tool, CATIA Composer, that will do a good job of taking a CAD model and then animating it and making it into SVG, for instance, or CGM too. But yeah, so you would want to use an authoring tool to do that.
Yeah, I think from also Creo Illustrate enables you to create a 3D animation and output to PDF. So I would say that you more want to use a tool to actually do the animation rather than code it. From an SVG point of view, then you'd probably want to use something like Adobe Illustrator, for instance, to create an animated SVG. So I'll probably, as Don says, avoid coding. You've got tools out there that can actually create that automatically for you.
Yeah, I've actually used Illustrator to animate an SVG, and it's got some nice tools in it for SVG. But for PDF, it's probably the ones you mentioned, like Creo Illustrate, or Quadraspace is another one that's has real strong PDF. They're more focused. Quadraspace is more focused on 3D PDF. as opposed to some of these other ones like CATIA Composer or Creo Illustrate are more general. Quadraspace is really just primarily for PDFs.
Yeah, I think the other question we had was, do I need to be a programmer to create the JavaScript for the canvas tag? I would say the answer is probably yes, you do, because if you're actually creating it in JavaScript, then you do need some kind of programming knowledge. But there was a link on that particular page as well to a supplier or Drawer.js, which actually gives you an interface and has libraries for doing certain actions in JavaScript. So again, I think you can usually find tools to actually do a lot of the legwork for you rather than having to code them in. So I think that's it for the questions, Don. Thank you for your input on that. So I'm just going to go through to our closing remarks. So one of the technologies we mentioned was the VisXview HTML5. Larson or Don's company are currently running an evaluation program on that, which you'd be, if you want to join, please email sales@cgmlarson.com or Don directly. You know, they're looking for people who are interested in the technology. You don't necessarily have to have a real-life application, but if you just want to get some more information, then please contact Don on that one. And also some closing information. Well, thank you for attending. The slide pack will be available, but probably not till later today on SlideShare. You'll also receive a follow-up email with a link as well to that information. And also we have another webinar coming up at the end of June. This is much more specific on another, this is a product demo of CGM Studio, which is targeted particularly at the oil and gas industry. So at that point, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. There will be a recording available of the presentation if you want to forward it to anybody else. But I'd like to thank you for participating this morning. It's been great. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.